This is an M156 engine from a C63 that we've got in that actually broke a head bolt, which is a relatively common issue. Just thought whilst we got the engine out and everything stripped, we'll go through the common issues again, similar to how we did on the other video, but a bit more in depth where we can actually see all of the parts. So I've removed the engine from the car. You can do this in place. You can take the heads off in place, but when they've broken a head bolt, it makes it particularly difficult to remove the head with the broken bolt remaining in it. They're not particularly hard to get the engine out of, so for ease of working on it, we just pulled it out the top, pulled the heads off, stripped it right down to get it on the stand. We've probably stripped it more than is required, but at this point, whilst it's out, it's just good to go through everything, make sure everything's 100% before it all goes back together. At this point, all we need to do with the block is get the faces cleaned up, get all of this carbon cleaned off the pistons. You have to be a little bit careful when you're doing that, not to get the carbon down in the piston rings, but we'll clean it up as best we can, make sure the cylinder walls are all clean, and then we will start to reassemble the heads. Common issues that we see with the M156 engine. Starting from the top of the engine, the intake manifold is made of magnesium alloy, so it's a bit of a strange setup. The two throttle bodies are actually inside the intake manifold, rather than normally you would expect them to be on the outsides at the back here. And they sit in a center plate which corrodes, and then you get holes in the plate which allows air from the top of the manifold into the bottom past the airflow meters, and it's not measured, so that can cause rough idle or high idle, and also engine warning lights. And then also on the inlet manifold you've got the fuel injectors, which are probably the biggest cause of engine failures on this engine. The injectors, when they get older, they stick open, fill the cylinders with fuel, and then as the piston comes up and it can't compress the fuel, it basically hydrolocks the cylinder, bends the con rod, or worst case, puts the con rod through the block, which I've seen a few times. They're relatively expensive from Mercedes. You can buy Bosch ones cheaper, but for the cost, it's, I would say, the #1 thing to do on this engine to prolong the life of it. Nearly every M156 engine failure I've seen is down to a faulty injector. Next item that's always worth replacing on these is the PCV valve. Sits on the back of the intake manifold. It's quite difficult to get to in place when the intake manifold is fitted, but whilst we've got it off and we've had to remove it anyway, it makes sense to replace it. When they get older, they can allow quite a lot of oil vapor back into the intake manifold, which then causes carbon buildup on the backs of the valves. So the next item, probably the most well-documented, most well-known issue with these cars, is the cams and the hydraulic lifters. So what happens is the camshaft over time starts to wear through the top of the hydraulic lifter, which in turn damages the lifter and also can damage the tips of the cams. We see it more often on the inlet camshaft rather than the exhaust. This is an exhaust camshaft. Luckily, these are all in good condition, and the lifters are all currently in good condition as well. So we'll have a chat with the customer, see what he wants to do, but these could go back in as they are. Although whilst it's all apart, it probably makes sense to put lifters in it. So this is an inlet bank 1 camshaft from a C63 that we did recently, and we'll show you the tip of the lobe has actually started to wear. And it does look minor, but the issue is once they start to go, and once they start to kind of break away the tip, it will just progress quicker and quicker and quicker. In the worst cases, it will completely wear through the top of the hydraulic lifter to the point where the cam lobe is pushing directly on the top of the valve. By that point, you'll have excessive valve train noise, but obviously you'll also get in small metal filings in the oil, which is not ideal. On this one, we got a brand new cam from Mercedes. Fortunately, they were available at the time because they had been on back order previously for a long time. There are some cams available from aftermarket companies, but you usually have to send your cam off, and then usually on an exchange basis. In regards to the hydraulic lifters, we normally replace them just with new lifters from Mercedes. You can get the SLS or the Black Series lifters, which have a diamond-like coating, which in theory prevents the issue of them wearing ever happening again. Sticking with issues on the top end of the engine, another well-known issue with these is the cam adjusters. So the cam adjusters used to advance and retard the timing, and they rattle, particularly on cold start. So there's a pin inside which sits into these locking plates, and the pin starts to slip out of its hole that it sits in. When it does that, you'll get quite a harsh rattle on cold start. These only come as a complete unit from Mercedes, and they're particularly expensive. So there are aftermarket plate options available, so we can strip them and rebuild them. We'll strip this one in a moment, as this car is having a set of plates from 63 Motorsports fitted. So we'll strip this one and see what the wear is. This car didn't particularly have a rattle, so I'm not expecting it to be that bad, but the customers decided that whilst we're there, it makes sense to do it. So take the front section off and move that to the side. These bolts get replaced as a one-time use. And then we remove these 5 T30 bolts. Take those out, and then when we remove this top cover, there will be a spring and a small plastic piece underneath. Just flip that over. There's a small plastic piece just in there. They are full of quite dirty oil from where the oil and the coolant is mixed on this car. This centerpiece spins, the pin's currently locked in place. But if you push from the back, that comes out. And then our spring and our small plastic piece are just in there. There we go. There's the spring. And there's a small plastic piece, which is important not to lose that piece. So this will obviously all get cleaned up before it goes back together. We've actually got new springs. We'll check the condition of everything. The pin is sat in here. And we'll also have new pins to go back in. This section pulls off. And then the plate you actually want to replace is this one. So it's pinned into place. So if you spin it, you can pull it apart. So I've just given this a quick clean up. And there is slight wear. You can see where the pin has started to slip out the hole. Got a couple of other plates here from old cars that are the same. The pin itself, where it starts to slip, it starts to round off the edges, which obviously makes it more likely to slip. Some people just flip the pin the other way and put it back in, but it's not ideal. The best way to do it is to replace the pin that comes with the kit. So that's basically it. That's stripped. We will basically clean all this up, make sure there's no kind of scratching or grooves. And then when we rebuild it, the most important thing is to make sure this inner piece can still turn. So when you reassemble it all, put the cover on, if you over tighten the bolts, it will lock it together. The center piece won't be able to turn, and you'll get fault codes because it won't be able to advance or retard the timing. But other than that, at first glance, it looks to be in good condition. We'll get the other 3 stripped, get it all cleaned up, and then rebuild them. Rocker covers, there's 2 different types. This is an early car, it's 2008. So this has the metal covers, and then the later cars went to a plastic cover. The plastic covers are very common for cracking along the edge, kind of around the bolt holes. It can be difficult to see, but if you've got an oil leak from the very top of the engine, and it's getting onto the exhaust manifolds and smoking off, it's more than likely the rock covers. You can replace the gaskets, but if you already have a leak, there's a good chance it needs new covers. Again, they were on back order for a long time at Mercedes, but I believe they are available now. This is the early metal cover, not so common for cracking. I have seen it, but probably down to people over tightening the bolts. They do corrode and generally look a little bit tatty, but these are generally a much stronger item than the plastic ones. Another important item on these is the V-bout and the pulleys on the front of the engine. So it's relatively common for either the bout to fail or one of the idler pulleys to fail, and then it will shred the bout, get behind the pulleys, and can cause quite a lot of damage. Worst case, can go through the front crank seal. And I've never seen it personally, but I've heard of a car where the bout's gone through the front crank seal and made the chain jump its timing. For a relatively inexpensive job, it's definitely worth doing. Access is a little bit tight down the front. If you've got the radiator fan out, it makes it a lot easier. Obviously with the engine out like this, it's much easier. So we replaced the tensioner and then all of the pulleys and also the bout. This is a set off of a car I did recently. The bout off of this C63, the one with the engine out, has actually gone hard. And when I took it off, it's kind of stayed in the same shape as what it was in. So if it hasn't been done, I always say to people with these injectors and then the bout and pulleys, if you don't have history of them being done, it's definitely something you should think about. This is the reason why we have the engine out of this car. This is the reason why it came to us. Customer was on a road trip in Wales. This is a very well looked after car. It is a 2008, so it's an early model. 80,000 miles roughly, so not particularly high. Full service history, put injectors in it a while ago. Like, he really looks after it. So he was on a road trip, got a low coolant warning on the dashboard, pulled over straight away. He knows about the common issues with these cars, so he checked the coolant reservoir and it was empty, checked the dipstick and straight away saw that it was overfilled and had very creamy oil. So he kind of knew what had happened. So he got the car recovered to us. Luckily, he didn't carry on driving it, it didn't overheat. We stripped it down, took the rock covers off and confirmed quite quickly that it was head bolts. I've got a selection of the old ones here. and then the broken one where you can see that it's just popped the top off the stud of the bolt essentially. So once that happens, it releases the pressure on the head gasket and allows the coolant and oil to mix. So it's a relatively well-known issue on these early cars. You don't see it so much anymore because most of them have already been done by this time. But the early cars had these Torx head bolts, and these are the ones that fail. And then on the later cars, they upgraded them to a bolt that takes an E socket, and those ones are much better, they don't fail. Final part to show. Whilst we had the cylinder heads off and we wanted to get a very light skim on them just to make sure they were flat, we sent them to our local machining shop and decided with the customer that we would get the heads kind of refreshed whilst they were off. So they've been completely stripped, all the valves and springs out, all new stem seals, and then a very, very minor skim because they hadn't overheated. Exhaust valves had to be ground very slightly because they were pitted. All the valves have been lapped in, heads have been through a wash tank to remove all the carbon on the backs of the valves. So these are now as good as new, ready to go back in. In summary, it may seem like there are a lot of issues with this engine and common issues, but it is a very good engine. I love these. They sound great, they make good power, and they are generally reliable. A lot of these are kind of preventative maintenance issues that you should do. If you let them all build up, it can get very expensive. So if it gets to this point where it's broken a head bolt, you then come across a lot of other things that's kind of like, oh, whilst you're in there, we should probably do this, which can be the cam adjusters, the lifters, cams if it needs them, engine mounts, PCV valve, obviously rock covers. It can escalate. So the best thing to do really is keep on top of any little issues you've got and don't let them build up, because like I say, they are a great engine. They just have a few known issues. If you've enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe and drop a comment down below.